And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Our exclusive report today on the audit of NARAL Pro-Choice New York puts Attorney General Eric Schneiderman in a rather difficult position. So what exactly should he do? Well, we're going to put that question to my next guests. They are, of course, the insiders. They're veterans of Albany's political scene, and they join us each week to talk about what's happening in the halls of the Capitol and beyond. Joining me tonight is Bruce Jory. He is a former senior advisor to 2 Democratic governors, now a consultant at Corning Place Consulting, and also an adjunct professor at UAlbany. Across the table from him is Dave Catalfamo. He is a former communications director to Governor George Pataki, now a partner at Capitol Public Strategies. Thank you very much, both of you, for being here.
Good to be here.
So this story is mostly problematic for Democrats, although we should note that there are a lot of elected officials, including Mayor Bloomberg, who NARAL was all in for Mayor Bloomberg in 2009. Eric Schneiderman, in particular, as I spoke about earlier, has a big problem, not only because NARAL was so heavily invested in him, but because his father is so heavily invested in the organization. I suspect if this gets to that point, he will have to recuse himself now.
I'm not sure. Andrew Cuomo, I mean, we have precedents. Eliot Spitzer had to go hard after the leadership of the Apollo, which meant Percy Sutton. And
ruined his relationship with black voters.
Yes, but he did it without fear or favor, and he conducted the investigation well. Andrew Cuomo had to investigate Alan Hevesi, and Alan Hevesi had been a close ally and strong supporter of his father's. Well, but you know, when you run for attorney general, the real question is, you're right. Now, the question is, he has to follow the evidence and where the trail leads. Your report indicates some real problems, and obviously the fact that NARAL seemed to demand or precipitate her stepping down quickly and quietly leads one to believe they think that there's a problem. I don't know anything about the evidence myself, but you know, he has to pursue this. His professional reputation is on the line. If he does it well and follows the facts where they lead and doesn't appear to be whitewashing it, I think he'll be fine. He'll make his professional reputation.
Do you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, but I mean, take a step back from it. NARAL is a large organization. It employs a lot of people. They've endorsed a lot of candidates. They've endorsed bipartisan candidates. So this is about one person. And ultimately, whether or not...
Wait a minute. It's about the person who was the face of the organization for nearly 2 decades.
But I didn't see anything in what I read. A, let's take a step back and say these are
allegations.
Sure,
allegations, yep.
And B, it doesn't appear to be, at least even by those, systematic. It appears that there's one individual potentially who acted, you know, possibly unethically with respect to the expenditure of funds with their organization, but that doesn't necessarily knock out, you know, the work of an entire organization over a number of years. Yeah. And therefore, you know, my initial reaction is that the Attorney General should probably recuse himself. But let's take a look and see what the evidence says and whatnot. And I don't think it's as big a problem for politicians as we might initially think, because again, you know, sometimes people do bad things.
But if we take a step back, I mean,
how many steps have we taken back now? We're off the cliff at this point, people.
It is what being the Attorney General is. It's not all hearts and flowers and great press releases. Yeah. Sometimes you have to go after people that it's personally tough. I mean, one of the things that will benefit everyone here is if the NARAL board acted responsibly, and as soon as it found out about the audit, precipitated her leaving, and then went back further and had that audit be even more, maybe expanded it to go beyond, and is going to turn it over to the proper authorities, then you're in a strong spot.
And further, there doesn't appear at this point to be any linkage between politics and these expenditures.
Right.
It appeared to be just, if it is what it appeared to be, greed.
Yes.
And so
pretty naked, actual greed, actually.
Yes.
Let's actually not talk...
Speaking of naked greed?
Speaking of naked greed, indeed. This is, wow, this story is really unbelievable. Chris Lee. Let's start with you. He was a Republican, the man is not dead, politically speaking he may be, but he is not. You know, what's amazing to me is actually there are people, and we were just talking about this last night on the show, in Western New York, including the Buffalo News has editorialized, like, whoa, wait, why'd you move so fast?
Right.
Like, the assumption is there's something else there, maybe.
I can't remember who wrote it. It might have been Maureen Dowd. I don't know who wrote it, but somebody wrote basically, if anyone is so stupid that they'd put their picture on
Gail Collins.
Gail Collins, right?
Times
I
is
mean,
Gail Collins.
on a website and a known public person expect that they're not going to have ramifications of it probably doesn't belong in office. And actually, that is the smartest thing I've heard about this entire thing. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm not. I really don't care about his personal life. I care about the fact that he actually would subject himself and his office to the ridicule that he's going to get for being that naive, that ridiculously stupid.
Well, I mean, look, if there was an intelligence test for running for elected office, I think that a lot of people would have a problem with that. So, and I'm not saying that elected officials are stupid. I'm just saying, where are you going to draw the line? You're smart as somebody else is idiotic, right?
I mean,
no, that's just
okay.
idiotic.
This was idiotic. I agree.
I concur. Two observations. One, it appears that his father played a major role here. There was a report, I forget which newspaper, that his father basically told him to shut it down and shut it down quick.
Yeah.
And his father had been the businessman who really built the family business that created the wealth that enabled him to jump into that race when George Maziarz pulled out of the congressional race the first time in 2008. The other question that's interesting is how, with these sexual scandals, some politicians just hang in there and others don't. I mean, David Vitter is standing there. Everybody knows he came up under a prostitution investigation, and he's still in the United States Senate, got reelected. Chris Lee is out that day. It's
interesting. What about the governor of, who was the Appalachian Trail governor?
Yes,
Sanford. Yeah,
Well,
who actually went on to say that it helped him become a better governor, which was hysterical.
I mean, but let's talk about, in all seriousness, this seat, the future of this seat looks like it's probably going to remain in GOP hands, but who would want the darn thing? Because it looks like it's going to be chopped up most likely. I mean, New York, we know, has to lose 2 seats, and this one looks like Territory A. I mean, why would you not chop it up?
Well, one of the fascinating things about, if you allow me to shift to the reapportionment, is we don't really know where these seats are going to come, because there's the potential that a large part of Slaughter's district could break away from the Rochester side and over in the western New York side. So, we could have Higgins versus the winner of this seat really go at it. So if you're a Jane Corwin, do I have her name right?
Yes. That's her name,
if you're a Jane Corwin who is who's an attractive candidate, an articulate woman, self-funder, maybe she takes the leap and says, you know what, I'm not going to just roll over on reapportionment. I'm going to run for whatever seat. And
look, at the rate they're dropping, you never know.
You never know.
I mean, it's you don't know. I mean, and people can, move out of office for any number of reasons, including good ones occasionally, or to pursue another opportunity. So I don't think that it's a fait accompli that district is.
I mean, we could be very surprised by reapportionment, particularly if this battle over reform, and I know you want to talk about that, comes up, and let's say we have a scenario where the governor would veto the lines that the legislature passes,
I mean, that was one
and
of
then
his
it goes to a
Ed
special
Koch.
master, which basically means an appointee of the court.
Sure.
We're not knocking out the 13th Amendment here, but you have a special master draw the lines. Who knows where those lines
Well,
will
and
be
New York
drawn.
has been in the special master's
Yes, they
hands
have.
before. In fact, twice before, if I'm not
In the
mistaken.
Wells v.
right?
Rockefeller.
So I think that it's probably, if I was to put money on it now, I would bet probably that we'll end up in court on this. I mean, the problem is that I've never really managed is Dean Skelos was, Shelley Silver never signed Ed Koch's pledge.
That's correct.
Dean Skelos didn't have to. I understand that everybody wanted to talk about reform. Actually, Andrew Cuomo didn't either. He wrote a letter of intent and support, but he never actually put a John Hancock on a pledge. It seems to me to be, speaking of not so smart if you're going to sign a pledge. All 30 at the time of his members did it too, and then renege on it. It's like a piece of paper that a person can hold up and be like, hello.
Well, no one's reneged on anything yet. There hasn't been there hasn't been an opportunity to renege.
Well, by March 1st, we'll know, won't we?
But if they do,
why March 1st?
Because that was the deadline that Ed Koch set, by which everyone was supposed to co-sponsor. That was what they agreed to. I mean, that's the fun.
And then the question is, does the Daily News and New York Post editorial pages continue backing Koch in terms of calling attention to those who would renege on the pledge? If those editorial boards hammer away day after day like they did during the campaign season, that could be a problem for anybody who reneges on
It's
the
just a
pledge.
difficult issue for voters to wrap their minds around. So far, it's rather esoteric, and notwithstanding whatever may happen, I think the larger issue is whether or not there would be a structural change to make essentially control the state almost perpetually Democratic. And I think the majority leader is right to be concerned about that.
Well,
And
if
I
he
think
was concerned,
as voters,
Dave, then he shouldn't have signed anything.
I mean, again, I haven't seen nobody's reneged on anything yet.
Not yet.
You know, and the fact of the matter is,
You're not saying the only way the Senate can remain Republican is by partisan gerrymandering, are you?
no, but I would say that it is a very real concern, and we've seen what has happened over the last 4 years. While we had Democrats in control of the New York State Senate, it was a complete and utter disaster on every level.
Let's talk about this then. I mean, in parting, because we don't have that much time,
Yes.
and really we should get to it because it's important, the budget, obviously. We're starting to see these fault lines, and they're on a number of areas. Again, the Senate Republicans upset about education aid. On
Yep.
this very show, Senator DeFrancisco suggesting that a two-way might be the only way, a deal between the Assembly and the Senate, the only way that the legislature might be able to jam the governor, who has been brilliant, really, at jamming them into a corner by keeping $4 billion, the state comptroller says today,
Right.
more than $4 billion out of that budget to come. Still don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
So,
It is brilliant, but I mean, for people who are watching this show to understand across the state, what the governor has essentially done is said, huge chunks of budget are going to be decided by either a commission or by my commissioners. And you can basically decide right now. So if I'm one of if $3 of $10, so if I'm a prison in Attica, or if I'm in a prison in Buffalo, if I'm a home care worker in New York City, or a teacher in Long Island, I could be one of the 3 of 10 that goes. We don't know which 3 of 10 because we just know it's going to be $3 of $10 are going to be cut, hypothetically, but we don't know which one it is. So by basically isolating all those individual forces, he's basically spread out all the unrest. But it's fair for legislators to say, hey, it might be mine, it may be my prison, it may be my home care worker, it may be my teacher. That's their responsibility.
Yeah, sure.
And so, the notion that they're holding up the process is actually just slow of itself while these commissions do their work. They don't really have anything even to opine on right now because they don't have anything in front of them.
that's driving them nuts.
Right.
But it's not fair to criticize them for basically...
I'm not criticizing them.
But I think that there's a feeling out there that they're somehow backtracking. They don't have anything to point and shoot at.
Well, look, we have heard the Republicans talk about the need to cut in taking tax increases off the table.
Right.
If the Republicans in the Senate are serious about that, they can't go and basically retreat from what they said. Their whole message has been, we're going to work with the governor to achieve a tax-free end to the structural deficit. So if Senator DeFrancisco switches gears and goes to a two-house budget with the Assembly lying up against the governor, that's going to be most interesting. I don't think so. I think when we talked about it last, we talked about the first 2 weeks after the budget would be, would the governor retain public support? If Siena Poll is right, he has.
But
now,
he's only retained it because he hasn't been specific about his cuts.
Okay.
That
No,
is
but
why it's
he
so
has
high.
been specific about the extent of the cuts.
But
Now the
nobody
question is, if
understands
the
that.
No, everybody
stakeholders...
should be terrified, but nobody's terrified.
Well,
Because they don't
well,
understand
but
it,
now,
because they don't know that
now
they're
is
the
the
one.
crucial two-week phase between now and March 3rd.
Yep.
If stakeholders give him enough agreements to put those cuts that you're complaining about, and that Senator Skelos complained about, in the 30-day amendments,
That's right.
by
30-day
March 3rd,
amendments, sure.
then he's holding trump card, and then the legislature will have great difficulty going over that because they don't have the votes to override a veto.
That's true. Okay, now we're done, unfortunately, out of time.
Sorry.
Of course, you're going to be... Yes, we have had the tutelage here from Mr. Jory. Thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate it.
No.
You will be back, of course, Dave Catalfamo. Thank you. You will be back. We will all be back. I'm always here, so thanks very
But
much.
I was the fiscal conservative tonight, not the Republican.
Fair enough, Bruce.
How was that?